Hi, I'm Lisa Mills. I'm an occupational therapist based at Bristol Royal Hospital for Children. I work with children and young people with OI across the southwest of England and South Wales. Today, the Brittle Bone Society have asked me to talk to you about getting back to normal after the pandemic and kind of what that might mean. So I think one thing we can all agree on is that the last year has been really, really hard for all of us and for a variety of different reasons. And I think one of the things that we need to do before we move on is perhaps reflect back at the last year and see what has changed. So the pandemic has impacted pretty much every aspect of our lives over the last year. For the purposes of this talk, I've broken that down into the areas of work, rest and self-care, and leisure. So in terms of work, um, we all know that there's been a big push to move out of offices and organisations and busy social workplaces into the home. Some people have been furloughed, some have unfortunately lost their jobs, um, and then there's been those that have been required to work from home, and the challenges alongside that: finding a quiet space, finding a suitable place where you can sit comfortably, having good internet connectivity, perhaps sharing internet connectivity with those that have been homeschooling, balancing homeschooling with trying to work or manage other younger children or other commitments or your own health needs as well. And then less access to help with day-to-day tasks, home maintenance, that kind of thing within your kind of area. Rest and self-care. Lots of people have experienced a delay to their medical care, not being able to get appointments when they need them, not being able to get medications when they need them, or speak, or being able to chat with their consultants or healthcare providers and support systems. Lots of us have had a change to our eating habits, and in part due to a loss of routine. All the things that we may have used to have done that filled our day, um, going to the shops, getting our groceries, going to work, doing the school run, meeting up with friends, that's all been stopped. So we have to fill our day somewhere. For some of us, that has been eating and planning food. And some people may have increased their weight a little bit, me included. Um, and then for some, we are in a pandemic. A lot of people will have experienced loss and be working through the grieving process for some time to come after that as well. In terms of leisure, isolation has been the biggest issue for everybody. We can't see our friends, we can't see our family. We've not been able to do the things that make us happy or the things that we find fun. Um, Going to the cinema, going to the shops, meeting up with friends, going on holiday. And for some of us, not being able to go out because of shielding or just some of those restrictions and our own anxieties, being less active, which going forwards may then impact on our levels of pain and fatigue as well. But despite these challenges, there are some positives. Well, I say positives. There may be some things from the pandemic that people see as opportunities, perhaps, for the future. So again, in terms of work, lots of workplaces and organisations are much more flexible because they've had to be. But if you're trying to balance other commitments alongside work, that flexibility is something for some people has been fantastic and would absolutely want to keep hold of that going forwards. Um, Public spaces and things like supermarkets and schools and big public buildings are trying to put safeguards in place with things like one-way systems, having less people there, um, um, and social distancing, which I know not everybody adheres to. But the idea of that means that there's less hustle and bustle and less crowds. So for somebody with OI, you may feel more comfortable because there was less risk of being bumped and knocked. And we found that particularly with some of our secondary school children. And then for those that are going out to work and commuting to work, me included, the traffic has been lovely, and I'm definitely not looking forward to that returning as restrictions ease. Again, in terms of rest and self-care, for some people, for some of the time, they've been able to achieve a bit of a rest and a bit of a break from the routine and hustle and bustle and pressures of their normal life. And time with their immediate family or their immediate household friends that they would never have had without the pandemic. Lots of apps and lots of focus has been brought out, and information on mindfulness and well-being, which can only be a good thing. And then in terms of medical care, the NHS and other medical providers have very quickly had to switch to providing remote appointments, so video calls, telephone calls. And although you might not want that for every appointment, if you live quite far away from your main centre or your specialist, actually some of the time that might be really nice to not have to travel a few hours to go and see your consultant if you don't need that face to face. Obviously, there will be some times when there will be that will be needed as well. And then in terms of leisure, well, we've definitely found new ways of connecting with people. There's been masses of online quizzes and karaoke and murder mysteries that people have been able to get involved with. People have been able to learn new skills, learn languages. There's been online art lessons and choirs and all sorts of things, which have been lovely. And some people have found new ways of connecting to people or connecting with friends that they didn't connect with quite as often, because they live far away, or you wouldn't normally see them that often. Actually, now during the pandemic, you've had the time to perhaps connect with them more often via video or phone. And then as restrictions are easing a little and we're going back out into the world, the social environment is a little bit more controlled. At pubs, we only have table service, and restaurants, so you're not having to navigate your way through the bar up to the bar to make an order. That the waitresses are coming to you. Similarly with cinemas and shops and things like that. I've talked earlier about one-way systems and having less people and stuff, so the less crowd. So there may be a bit more control in those areas as well. So despite the challenge, and there's been a lot, lockdown has given us a chance to reevaluate our lives and the opportunity to maybe create something new. So as we start to think about coming out of the other side, I want you to take time to think about the bits and select the bits of normal that we want to go back to, the things that worked for us and the things that we enjoyed. And also think about the things that we don't want to go back to. What don't we want to keep? What we want to change? But then also think about some of your habits and things that you did during lockdown, some of the skills, and are any of those that you want to bring into the post-COVID world? Maybe you really enjoyed, you went out for exercise or for a walk, or a socially distanced meet up with a friend in the park once a day, and actually that was really useful to your well-being. Maybe that's something that you'd like to bring in to your new post-COVID world that you weren't doing before. So have a little think about those. And from that, we can start to think about what we want and our post-COVID or getting back to normal to kind of look like. Once we kind of know some of the things we want to take forward into our getting back to normal, we have to figure out how we're going to do it. And for some people, that is going to be a big leap of faith and maybe just as hard as that initial we're going into lockdown, we're in a pandemic. Don't be surprised if you still feel anxious about this. And I think the key here is to take things at your pace. Don't let others bully or pressure you into doing things that you don't want to. But equally, try not to let your anxiety be an excuse not to kind of push yourself a little bit and challenge yourself. And also let other people move at their own pace. You'll know people that feel more comfortable and move faster than you, but you may also know people that are finding it more difficult and taking things a little bit slower, and that's okay. Also thinking about your own levels of activity and what you've been doing over the last year, what your levels of pain are, levels of fatigue are. Have you had any deconditioning because you've not been as active, or maybe you have eaten a little bit more and putting a bit of weight on? And the key is to do a bit little and often. And Claire's going to talk to you a bit more about exercise in a minute, so I'll leave that one to her. Goal setting is really helpful to help you move forward. Try and set yourself really small goals, but make them realistic and make them something that you can definitely achieve. You know, if you're somebody who's been shielding, it might just be, I am gonna, go to the park on a really quiet day and meet one friend. Or it might be faster than that. Again, go at your speed and at your comfort level. But try and do something that challenges you every couple of days. Don't worry if it doesn't go well, just keep at it. And really important, celebrate the wins, whether that be big or small or only a bit of it or all of it. Celebrate it, because each win is a step back to your new normal. So control what you can, control what can be controlled, make your own choices. So aim for a balance of that work, rest and self-care, and leisure. So what can you control? If you've put on weight and actually that's bothering you, maybe focus on your diet. The weather's getting a bit warmer and we'll be more likely to eat a bit more salad and barbecue and feel a bit happier about going outside rather than in the wind and the rain of the winter. So focus on that. Try and control it. How are you going to control your diet? How are you going to control your exercise? Also control how you see people. You know, if you feel more comfortable having people in your own garden where you know the rules, or do that, or in their garden, but be clear and communicate the rules. Or again, you might feel more comfortable in a controlled restaurant or pub where you're only at the table and you don't have to go anywhere else. If you work and that's something that you're not sure about in terms of getting back to work, talk to them. We've just mentioned about flexible working and how organisations are embracing that. Maybe that's something that your work can support you with. And also, you might also be entitled to some reasonable adjustments as a disabled person under the Equity Act. So it might be worth chatting with your employer about that and generating a support plan with them to bring you back into the office or wherever your place of work is at your own pace. Try and vary your routine. So you see different people and you do different things in different situations rather than it just being the same thing. And again, this is about challenging yourself a little bit. So if you find that you go to one supermarket and it makes you really nervous, try a different one. If you find that going out at really busy times of the day is not so good, try mixing in walks at quieter times of the day and then maybe do one a week where it's a little bit busier. So you're gradually improving your confidence and your support network around being able to access those things. And then of course, seek support. Talk to your friends, family, trusted colleagues. The BBS is really helpful. Talk to them and they've got loads of resources. And then health professionals, speak to your consultants, your nurses. If you've got therapists, speak to them about how they can help you and support you in getting back to normal, or what you want your new normal to be. So it's been a really difficult year, and we're not over. It's not over yet. We've still got a little bit further to go, but we are on our way to getting back to maybe a new normal. So don't rush back to your pre-pandemic life if that means sacrificing your mental and physical well-being and health. Think about what you want to bring forward from your old life, your old pre-pandemic life, and the good habits that you developed during lockdown, and bring that into your new normal. So it's given us the opportunity to reevaluate our lives and change them if we want to. But whatever you do, try and aim for that balance of work, rest, and play or leisure. All right. Thank you for listening.
That was brilliant, Lisa. I love how you brought in the concept of control, because many of us have felt out of control during this pandemic. Things have been put on us. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that and how?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things I always talk to people I work with about, and myself, is if you're ever feeling kind of anxious or out of control, one of the best things that we can do is within our life try and find something that's predictable and something that we can control. And in the pandemic, we've not been able to really do either of those things. So it really is kind of looking at your life, and by setting goals and setting a plan, you're giving your day, your life, a bit of predictability, but then you're also controlling the little bits that you can control, and that helps us manage our anxiety a little bit. So for those things that are out of our control, we can just cope with them perhaps a little bit easier.
I've got a very interesting question from Jamie in the chat about the role of free lateral flow testing in sort of helping us with that sort of reassurance and that socialization, opening that window so it's a bigger world for us. Have you had any experience of that with the people you've been caring for?
Not so much, to be honest. My role is mainly pediatrics, so we haven't
amongst the
really,
parents?
and the parents haven't talked to us that much about it. I think the main time that we've come across it is as the secondary schools have gone back, and the secondary school children have all had to do it. And if anything, as you say, I think the lateral flows are giving people a lot of reassurance. And even when people have come in to see us in hospital, we can give them the assurance that, I mean, I don't know about yourselves, but in our trust, we're all having to test ourselves twice a week. So they've got the reassurance that they pretty much know that everybody that who's getting really close to them when we're doing therapy with their children and with them, we're COVID free, hopefully. So that gives them a little bit more confidence in being able to get a little bit closer to people, being able to get into those closer situations. And in the secondary schools, the children going back, knowing that there's only so much control you can have around all of those teenagers mixing. So if we know that most of them are likely to be COVID free, yeah, that just helps with anxieties about that spread is not going to come home to perhaps those parents who are shielding as well.
I know everyone's an individual, but are there any common goals you've seen people use, either in children or in the wider sphere, just to give examples that people could think about?
Yeah, I mean, I think for certainly the people I've worked with, it's much more about coming out of shielding and then going back into the world again, and just the anxieties around crowds and people and people who are not socially distancing. So I think there's a mix of not just COVID, but also being in an environment that's been protected for a year, where you haven't really been in crowds, so you haven't had the risk of being knocked and bumped and that kind of hustle and bustle, or having to ask people to reach things off a shelf for you and things. So just kind of redeveloping that confidence a little bit. So little goals, if for some of our adults, if they've had shopping deliveries and perhaps going to a supermarket or a local shop is something that bothers them, maybe going with one friend, or and just aiming to go into one small thing, and you're going to go at a quiet time of the day. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to buy a pint of milk, and then I'm going to go home again. And making that really small. One of the skills that we use, or analogies that we use with some of our young people, is like a ladder. So if you've got a big goal, I'm using the supermarket, people may think other things, it's just because it's understandable. So I want to go to the supermarket and do a family shop. It's going to take me about an hour. It's probably going to be busy because I only have a Saturday that I can do it. But that is really frightening. So if you think of a ladder, what are all the steps on that ladder that you have to climb to get to that top goal, to break it all the way down? So it might be being able to drive to the car park. It might be, how am I going to negotiate my wheelchair or my trolley? How am I going to find a quieter time of the day? And gradually taking those steps on that ladder until you feel comfortable at the top. So it's a very gradual process. Does that kind of make sense?
Oh, completely. And I think it's also the journey's not alone. There are people who can help you, both in the Bristol Bone Society, the wider community, the Facebook page.
Absolutely.
Just share that goal often makes it more achievable.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I completely agree. I think people sharing what they've achieved and sharing their goals, and having people to support them along with that and cheer you on almost. Yes, that's great, you know. And I think that's what I talked about. Celebrate those wins, even if it's only something really small or looks like really small to somebody else. For you, it's still a win. And I think keeping that positivity to keep yourself going. I'm very happy to share with the Bristol Bone Society, like the ladder kind of technique if they want me to. I'm very happy to send that through, and they can put it on the workspace and web space.
We are going to produce an output from this day because we've had so many good tips and hints that I think many people will find helpful. Lisa, thank you so much again, and hopefully you can stay at the end if there are any other questions that come up. Thank you.